optimal minimalism.
At this altitude, I can run flat out for a half mile before my hands start shaking.
Can I ask you a personal question?
Now would seem an appropriate time.
What if I did the opposite?
I'm a cybernetic organism, living tissue over a metal endoskeleton.
This episode is brought to you by AG1, the daily foundational nutritional supplement that supports whole body health. And I do get asked a lot what I would take if I could only take one supplement. And the true answer is invariably AG1. It simply covers a ton of bases. I usually drink it in the mornings and frequently take their travel packs with me on the road. So what is AG1? AG1 is a science-driven formulation of vitamins, probiotics, and whole food sourced nutrients. In a single scoop, AG1 gives you support for the brain, gut, and immune system. So take ownership of your health and try AG1 today. You will get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first subscription purchase. So learn more, check it out. Go to drinkag1.com/Tim. That's drinkag1, the number 1, drinkag1.com/Tim. Last time, drinkag1.com/Tim. Check it out. Hello, poodles and parakeets, or maybe you prefer polar bear, if you're a tough guy. This is Tim Ferriss, and welcome to another episode of The Tim Ferriss Show. Please excuse my irreverence. I've had way too much coffee, and that is my dog attempting to do breakdancing. Sorry for the background noise. This episode, like all episodes of The Tim Ferriss Show, includes a dose of deconstructing someone who is a world-class performer and exceptionally good at what they do. In this case, we have a science writer, but the other half of this show, quite frankly, is purely selfish. It is me exploring subjects that I want to know more about. And in this case, the guest is not a military strategist, not an entertainer. It is Eric Vance. Eric with a K. You can say hi to him on Twitter at Eric Vance. He is an award-winning science writer based in California and Mexico City. After working as a scientist on research projects dealing with dolphin intelligence and coastal ecology, he became an educator and then later an environmental consultant. In 2005, he switched gears and attended UC Santa Cruz's famed science communication program. Great program. I almost went to UC Santa Cruz for fiction, in fact, and discovered a passion for journalism. Since then, he has built his career around science-based profiles of inspiring or controversial figures. And we dig into not only the science, but also his approach to writing and conveying that. His work has appeared in Harper's Magazine, the New York Times, Scientific American, National Geographic. He's also a contributing editor at Discover Magazine. And his latest book is Suggestible You: The Curious Science of Your Brain's Ability to Deceive, Transform, and Heal. In this episode, we cover many topics with equal amounts of the profound, actionable, and hilarious. We talk about the power of placebo and how you can increase the odds of it working for you, if you so choose, which conditions respond well to placebo, for instance, depression, Parkinson's, and which do not, how the mind, religion, bedside manner, and peer pressure can dramatically influence medical outcomes. And then we get to some stories, and not necessarily in that order. Catching porcupines in South Africa. This story alone is worth the time it takes to listen to this episode. It'll make you laugh out loud. It's awesome. Finding and studying a pig shit sommelier. Yes, you heard me correctly. Why he got electrocuted for half an hour at the NIH laboratories in Bethesda, Maryland. The story of why he chose to be cursed by a witch doctor in Mexico City, and much, much more. So please enjoy a conversation that I very much enjoyed with Eric Vance. And as always, you can find all links to everything mentioned in this episode in the show notes for this episode and every other episode at 4hourworkweek.com, all spelled out, 4hourworkweek.com/podcast. Eric, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Tim. I appreciate it.
Of course. And where does this find you at the moment?
I am currently in my office in Mexico City, in the Roma, if anyone's ever been to Mexico City, where I'm based.
In the DF. And how did
exactly.
How did you end up in Mexico City?
Actually, I told my wife years ago that I'm a freelance journalist, that I can live anywhere in the world, and I wanted to travel with her, and she works in development, and she came back and told me Mexico City is where she got the job. And I said, I kind of meant like Paris or Venice, anywhere in the world, like London. But we came down here and I fell in love with it. And so I love it. It's an amazing city.
Great food. From what I hear, I've never been, but
Unbelievable.
apparently incredible food. And you've traveled a lot. You've spent time all over the planet. And what I'd like to start with perhaps is why biology? How did you get interested in biology? And we'll talk about some of the adventures that then relate to that, but how the initial interest?
When I was a kid, I was never all that good in school. I had some attention issues, and when I was
issues.
Attention.
Oh,
Sorry.
attention. Got it.
I didn't pay attention real well. But like when I was out of school, like I spent a lot of time like walking through the woods, basically looking for dead things and then sort of poking them and opening them up and stuff. And I didn't realize this was a field like this. It wasn't until like later, even when I had gone through biology classes, I didn't really realize that that's what we were talking about until I really got to just before college, when I realized that, poking dead things and finding them is actually something people do for a living. And I was hooked at that point.
And what did the trajectory look like? I mean, did you go immediately, as soon as you got into undergrad, into the sciences?
I did. I got really hooked as an undergrad in sort of field biology. There's two kinds of biology. There's microscope biology and binoculars biology, and I got into binoculars biology, chasing after animals and stuff like that, and looking at trees, and I loved it. And I really wanted to be a scientist. I wanted to be be a PhD and publish papers. I just wasn't that good at it. I loved wandering and learning new things, but doing the actual work was not my forte. And so I went through a bit of a crisis and backed away from biology and discovered journalism, and specifically science journalism. And that's where I really found my groove.
How old were you when that happened? When you took that fork in the road?
I was 27, I think. I'd spent a solid 5 years after college being a sort of a biologist for hire and working in some laboratories around the world and doing some different things, but never really, logging in. I kept jumping from one thing to the next. And I was about 27 when I finally discovered science writing and went back to grad school for journalism.
How did you make that decision, in the sense that, and I also realized I accidentally used a Yogi Berra quote where it said, when you took that fork in the road, that's not, if you reach a fork in the road, take it. That's not proper English, folks. I need more caffeine. But what was the moment in which you decided that you were going to bite the bullet, so to speak, and pursue that? I mean, was it a particular conversation, a particular dinner?
I always had this sort of scientific like sense of like superiority to writers, and I always thought writers were kind of a bore, and yet I had written a novel that will never be published and never should be published as a scientist, and I just loved writing, but I just didn't like there's something about that process that I just couldn't admit that I actually liked. It was like this, I know I'm a scientist, I'm analytical, and yet I'm doing all this stuff on the side. And finally, it was really a matter of a single Google search after doing some soul searching, where I typed in science and writing into a Google search, and lo and behold, I found out there's a whole career for science writers, which I had never really thought of. And when I was a kid, I used to get these little things called zoo books. There are these little, magazines that you get. It's like your first mail that you ever got when you were a kid. And I always let you have like the animals, and you learn about the animals. And I always wanted to be the guy who was like in the magazine, like, pulling apart, sharks, or, picking up ants and doing stuff. And what I realized in that moment was, I don't want to be the guy in the magazine. I want to be the guy making the magazine. Like, it was the magazine that I really loved. It wasn't, every month it was something new, and that's what I liked. Mm-hmm. And that like clicked, and then I was off.
Now, although you went on the other side of the camera, so to speak, to document and interview and research, you've also spent a fair amount of time in the field, right? And
yep.
So, and I don't know the answer to this question, but which came first, the pig shit or the porcupines?
Oh, the porcupines came before the pig shit.
Okay,
yeah.
So can you explain the porcupines, please?
Well, all right. So in my process of becoming of trying to be a scientist, one of the places I went was in South Africa, and I needed a subject for my PhD, and so I just figured I'd go to South Africa and like catch sharks and do cool stuff and figure out what I was all about. And
Why South Africa?
I had seen the movie The Power of One, and I really liked it. I thought it was good. And so I said, that's where I'm going. Yes. And that was literally as much thought as I put into it. Like I was an idiot as a kid. And so, and I actually tried to reenact, I'd go like through these slums of South Africa, I'd go jogging and stuff, thinking that children would like chase me. And I just had people be like, dude, you shouldn't be here. Like, go away before you get hurt. But I did. So I'm wandering around and I ended up hooking up with this laboratory in Cape Town, University of Cape Town. And sometimes they farmed out their scientists to documentaries. And so I was still a scientist at that point, but there was a documentary. The BBC was doing a program on aardvarks and the animals that live in their burrows. So it was really exciting stuff.
It's like a thriller.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, they had aard wolves and a bunch of other animals that live in these burrows, and one of them was porcupines. So what they needed a biologist to go in and catch the porcupines and habituate them. And that was the deal. And they said, hey, they got this lame kid sort of wandering around their lab who they were like, hey, let's just send him because he's not really doing anything. And so they sent me into the bush for 10 days with some really interesting characters. I mean, the people who end up, signing up for this are a diverse group. And it was the guy who was leading the expedition was sort of this guy who'd spent a lot of time in the bush and was really savvy, but really quiet, didn't say anything. And he'd sort of occasionally catch birds with his bare hands. And it was just like, that was about all.
It's like a praying mantis, although a very large one. Yeah.
Yeah. He'd like walk in front of the car and there'd be this bird, like sort of, crouch, and he'd just like snap out and grab it. And then there was this other dude who was in the field to detox from his heroin addiction. And he was a former Satan worshiper who had become a born again Christian. And I learned that it's not actually that different. Actually, you'd think he didn't actually change much. He just sort of switched sides. He was just before he'd say, I can feel the claws of Satan like ripping into my chest and parting the skin of my chest, and now it's a bad thing. Before it was like a good thing.
Before it was like a massage, right?
That was like Saturday night, like it was his normal thing. And he was really intense, and he was still totally focused on Satan as a born again Christian, which I had never thought about before, but it is a big thing. And he was just this really interesting guy. It was sort of me and him and this guy who never spoke. And so we sort of spent our days smoking cigarettes, and the recovering addict would like try to catch fish with a stick and a hook that he had found, and then at night we'd go out with this giant truck and this light, these sort of like rifle looking like flashlights, and look for porcupines. And I learned a few things about porcupines. We were not prepared. It was day 3 before someone suggested we get some gloves, which had like blankets.
Somebody forgot the packing list.
Like it didn't even occur to us. That's how bad it was. Like it wasn't that we like forgot them. We just never occurred that we might want gloves catching porcupines.
Thank God they called the professionals.
Right? This is who they sent. And so, I mean, a quick thing about porcupines. We learned that there were sort of like 2 primary defense strategies that porcupines have, not surprising to anyone. One of them, the surprising one, I suppose, was that they're actually really fast, especially when you've been smoking cigarettes all day. They're actually, when they start to run, you're just like, oh shit, this one's running. And they know where their burrow is, you don't. And so you're just, we spend a lot of time just sort of like tripping over rocks and stuff, and then like with our hands on our knees, sort of like just catching our breath, having been dusted by some fat little porcupine. So that was the first technique. The second one was more usable, which was when they just stick their head against a tree, put up their quills, and go like, yeah, give it your best shot, asshole. Like, go ahead. And those are the ones we wanted because we have a little syringe of ketamine, which was endlessly fascinating to the recovering addict.
I'm sure. Endlessly fascinating to a lot of people in Silicon Valley too.
Yeah. It's actually very useful for tranquilizing these animals. So, but what's interesting, what I didn't realize is actually every time when you watch, a nature film about, animals like a porcupine, like they didn't just stumble upon that animal and like now they're filming it. That's not the way it works. Like someone went out beforehand and prepped the whole scene. And one of the ways they had to prep it is you catch the animal, you drug it, and then you have to put a tracking device inside of it, because the people on watching TV don't want to see a radio collar.
They don't want to see a Petco exactly. Harvey collar around the wild porcupine, right?
Yeah, it kind of kills the mood. Which is, it's not great. It's not great for the porcupine because he has to go through invasive surgery. So we did that with this one porcupine that they named Uncle Eric, and I never really was clear whether that was they were making fun of me or it was an honor of me. It really could have gone either ways. So we did that, and then we released Uncle Eric, sort of back into the wild to lick his wounds, and then what the next step is to habituate them, and so. Basically, habituation is like one step down from taming. You basically hang out with the porcupine or whatever animal for hours and hours and hours until they realize that you're not going to hurt them, and they understand that you're not going to feed them. So they just ignore you, like you're just another tree or whatever in their environment, and they just go about their business. And that's when you bring in the film crew. So it's not at all like a natural setting. But you might wonder, like, how do you do that? And basically you just have to talk to him for hours and hours on end. You have to get him used to the human voice, because when people come in to film, they'll be talking and stuff. So I sat out in the middle of the classic empty savanna with the huge sky and scorpions crawling over my feet, and just talk to this porcupine. And what do you talk to a porcupine? Uncle Eric and me hanging out together. And it was like me and this porcupine. And what are you talking about? Well, you talk to him about your relationship problems. And I was sitting there, being like, and then she told me that she didn't want me to come because her friend was coming, but I don't even know her friend. And then a couple of years, okay, let me go back a couple of years, the porcupine's sitting there, listening to me like bitch endlessly about this.
And what is the porcupine doing? Not sitting on a rock smoking a cigarette, listening, I'm guessing.
No, he's sitting with his head against a tree as he was doing in the first place, with his spines up, just going, please, God.
She's like, dude, attack me or leave. I can't do this forever.
Are you gonna kill me or what? Like, what is this? And I remember one night I heard the storm coming, so I sort of go up on the little ridge and look out, and I say, okay, I got an hour or so before it comes. I come back and then Uncle Eric's gone. I'm like, okay. I'm like, dang it. So I grab my tracking device and flip it on, and he's not popping up on the scanner at all. And this thing has like 100-yard radius, so he basically cleared 100 yards in like less than a minute just to get away from me. Like, as soon as I turned my back on him, he was like, gone, I'm gone. And he just bolted for the horizon. And I remember just like, and that was one of the moments where I really was wondering if I was in the right career or not.
So that was on the field biology side. I like the binoculars versus microscopes. Actually, the last interviewee, or the last few folks I had on the interview, were on the opposite end of the spectrum. So they were actually focused on things like the mechanistic target of rapamycin and looking at mTOR and all this cool stuff. So the field biology, if we then flash forward, right, you are learning more about science writing. What was the program that you were in?
It was the Santa Cruz, University of California, Santa Cruz science writing program, which really changed my life. It's an amazing program.
Who or what lessons had the biggest impact on you through that course? Or that program, I should say.
God, there's so many. I mean, the biggest thing is, as a scientist, you're trying to be exact. You need to be precise, and as a storyteller, you need to convey a feeling and a sense, because people don't walk away. People don't read journalism or storytelling the same way that they read a scientific paper. And you walk away with kind of an idea, a couple little facts and an idea, and you really have to shift your thinking to tell a story to someone. You have to have characters. You have to have an arc, and that's really hard. And that's something I think I learned there, but I'm constantly trying to perfect, because it's a totally different way. I mean, aside from all the little things like no longer using the passive tense and and the technical jargon, all that kind of stuff. It's really about telling a story, and it's not about conveying information.
Or it's about wrapping the information in this sugar-coated delight called a story, so that you actually absorb it.
Yeah.
Who are well, I guess I have so many questions, just because I just finished a book myself, so writing is on the brain. What about your writing, besides, say, using the passive tense less, improved the most before and after? Going into the program, coming out of the program. So, and the reason I ask is I can think of, for instance, in my own history, going back to a class that I took with John McPhee, which was called The Literature of Fact. And what he really burned into my brain, and of course, I won't even approach 10% of the writer he is ever, but was how visually he thinks of structure. And it would almost spec it out on a blackboard or a whiteboard like a football play. It was really fascinating, or even like a Krebs cycle or something. It was very, very visual, and I'd never thought of architecting something out that way. So that was a novel idea that I still rely on sometimes when I am stuck, right? When I can't figure out how to structure a story, that's something that I'll still do. Are there any tools or any particular changes that you experienced in your own writing?
Yeah, that's a really good one, huh? Have you ever heard of the Open Notebook?
No, I haven't.
I should check it out. It's a website run by some really good science writers that's for science writers, and they have a section that's just that. It's basically science writers doing schematics of stories they've done.
How cool!
And their favorite stories.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's great. I did one where I actually tried to sketch out Burkhard Bilger's a New Yorker story he did on youth cowboy, youth rodeo programs. It's an amazing story, and I just loved it. And so I tried to sketch it out, and then I sketched out one of my own. And you'd love it. It's very visual. It's very cool. And
so it's people taking a stab at other authors or other writers' work in addition to their own.
Yeah, exactly. So it's both cool. Your experience as a reader and your experience as a writer. And of course, I liked his story better than the one I did, so it looks a lot better. But it's very you'd like it. There's a bunch of other gems in there too. But the thing that I think I really took away, and I wasn't expecting from that program, was a love of characters, of the people. Like I tell the story about the porcupines. It's just a weird thing, but it's like you tell a biologist a story and they're like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like, of course, that's our job. They're weird people doing a weird job. And that's what I really fell in love with, was the people who do it and how they approach it. And so for the first couple of years of my career, I just wrote profiles about amazing scientists who I thought were doing cool stuff. And that's really what I focused on, was sort of like, who are these people who are interesting but also can tell a broader story? Like, I have something I want to say about gene therapy or chemicals in the atmosphere that via volatile organic compounds and that changed the atmosphere over a forest. I want to tell that story, but I really want to tell it through a person. Like, who is that person who can tell that story, and what's their life like, and what do they think about, and why are they sitting on top of a tree, like trying to get these air samples. Like, how did they end up there? And that's what I really fell in love with. That program was the people. Like, how do you bring a person? How do you tell a story through a person? Who is that person? And it's not always the easiest person to find. Sometimes they're the ones you're not looking for.
So that's the best tee up I could imagine for my next question, which is this. I should point out. I mean, these are all new things to me. I don't know the answers to these questions. The first reporting assignment you sent me a little note was with a guy who studies the smell of pig shit for a living. So probably not sort of the Mickey Mantle you were looking for 10 years. How did that come to be? And walk me through, like, you graduate from your program. How do you go from there to this assignment?
Well, you're a young freelance writer. No one cares what you think or what you want to write about. Of course, I want to write about like sharks and, important stuff.
They're like, yeah, get in line, pal.
Yeah. Like, yeah, go ahead. We'll look at your pitch. Yeah, definitely. And so, so you have to come up with, stuff they don't have, and one of those things is chemistry, like not a lot of people covering chemistry. So I was like, all right, I'll do some chemistry. And so it actually started, I was working at the Chronicle of Higher Education. And I got this.
Where was that?
The Chronicle of Higher Education in Washington, D.C.
It's
a magazine that, like, unless it's like highly respected among universities and no one else has heard of it. But it's actually a really great outlet. They do great science writing. So it was sort of my opportunity to really dig in and do cool stories. But one of the stories I did that wasn't that cool was this sort of little side 300-word blurb about the chemical involved in. Have you ever heard of ladybug taint?
I mean, that pulls up an incredible image in my head. I'm pretty sure it's not accurate. So no, I'm going to say no.
I had the greatest title for this story that they wouldn't let me use, but
wait. Okay. So now I have to ask, what was the headline?
Stinky ladybug taint.
That could be your punk rock band at this point.
Right.
So, okay. So no, I don't know what ladybug taint is. What is
so
that?
If you're crushing a bunch, you're from the Bay Area, right?
I am. Well, I live in the Bay Area. Yeah.
You live in the Bay Area. Well, if you're crushing up a bunch of grapes in like a classic sort of wine crush, it's inevitable that you're gonna get one or two ladybugs in there. It just happens. And what happens is if you get like one ladybug in a big vat, you kind of get this nice little bell pepper taste. It's like this nice sort of hint in the background. If you get two or three, it gets overpowering and it just ruins the whole batch. And it's called ladybug.
That must be hard as hell to deal with. I mean,
right?
Ladybugs, I don't know how many people listening have been inside a wine vat, but those things are gigantic. I mean, wow. Okay.
Well, so you can't like drop a ladybug in because you don't know if there's already one in there. So, I mean, apparently it's a big thing. Anyway, what's interesting is I was talking to scientists who like discovered the chemical that does this. It's an extremely potent, powerful chemical. I think I calculated if you took an Olympic-sized swimming pool and you put a teaspoon in there, you'd still be able to taste it. Like, this stuff is brutal.
So
like,
sharks are to blood what humans are to ladybug taint in a swimming pool. Something like
if a shark smelled this, he'd be the same way. He'd be like, damn, like no. like anyway, it's potent. And so I started talking to this guy the way I do. And I was like, wow, this is a weird job. Like, how did you find these? Like, oh yeah, there were some ladybugs on my windowsill and I shook them up in a jar and it smelled this thing. And if you ever eat a ladybug, which I don't, Tim, have you eaten any ladybugs?
No, I've eaten a lot of crickets, but no ladybugs. I need to expand my repertoire, maybe.
There's a reason why you don't, and that's the reason why they're red and black. It's a warning sign because they have this chemical and they will unleash it if you try to eat them. And that's what it's for. So he smelled this thing. He was like, oh my God, I got to figure out what this is. So I asked him, of course, well, what's your job that you do this? And he's like, well, I mean, I don't actually study ladybugs. I actually study pig shit. He didn't say it like that, but that's what went through my head. And I was like, wait, like, and he specifically focuses on smells and these like strong smells and the chemicals that are involved in what we smell. And so I was like, oh my God, wait, so you study, pig manure, that you study the smell of pig manure. He's like, yeah, I mean, the aerosol, chemical nature. He had a great way to sort of say, I study smelly pig shit. And I was like, oh my God, I have to come out and meet you. I have to like see your laboratory. This is amazing. And so I pitched Nature, which is a very prestigious journal. It also does a lot of science journalism. And I was like, you have to please let me send, I've done a little work for them before. And they're like, please, can you send me out to talk to this guy? And they were like, all right, he's in Iowa. And he's like, all right, you got a couple $100, like go out there, come back, get the story. It's the first time I've ever had to like, been on assignment to do like a story like that. I was very excited. And it was the most amazing lab I've ever seen.
Now, hold on. What did so this was this your first kind of pitch for a remote assignment?
Yes.
Okay. What did you do it via letter or email, or was it via phone? When you were like, hey boss, or hey editor?
I put together a nice like email, like with all the pieces the pitch was to have. And it was, and it was like fascinating jobs. And I sort of caged it around people who have interesting jobs and tried to keep the poop humor to a minimum, though I did get the word poop in the journal Nature. And that's a win.
That's a win.
That's a win.
Okay. So you fly out to Iowa.
So I fly out to Iowa, and actually I flew out to Nebraska because I didn't actually know the difference between the two. So I ended up renting a car and driving to Iowa because that's how nervous I was when I was booking my tickets. So I fly and I get out of the car and you can smell it as soon as you get out, so that you can actually smell. It's a phenol, a specific. It's often called by people who are into this world. It's called Band-Aid or farmyard, and it's the first thing you smell when you know there's a barnyard nearby. It has a very low vapor pressure, so it sticks to anything it touches, which means a little bit of like dust in the air and it'll stick to it, and it's the first thing you smell. It smells a little like a Band-Aid, and it's like, oh, there must be a farm nearby. That one. Mm-hmm. So that's what I smell as soon as you get out. It's a very agricultural area. It was up in Ames, and I go in this guy's lab, and he just introduces me to this world of smells. Like that, he's got like everybody's got these smelly pens everywhere, and he has all the students like smelling the pens to try with their eyes closed, try like really hone their ability to recognize smells that are hidden. And he's got this device called the let's see if I can do this, multi-dimensional gas chromatography mass spec olfactometer.
Oh my God.
Have you got one, right?
Yeah. I'm looking at one right now next to my tea. Okay.
This thing is amazing. So you put let's go back to wine, right? You pour some wine in this thing, right? And then what it does is it basically, gas chromatography cuts the wine up into different pieces, into different chemical components. And it breaks them up, pushes them aside from each other, and starts giving them to you one at a time through a little cup that goes over your nose. At the same time, you have a mass spec giving you a layout of what these things are. So you're smelling it, the computer's analyzing it, and together you can find stuff that no one's found before. Because our noses are incredibly, incredibly sensitive. And so he does this, and he does this with wine. And that's like for practice and for some other things, but mostly he focuses on pig shit. Like that's his bread and butter. And he studies like these chemicals that make pig shit like really, really bad. And he's looking for subtle differences, the song of that, that one big dropping that just, that's going to solve it. And he's trying to diminish that smell.
I was going to ask, I assume he's not making perfume. I mean, so now why is it important to diminish the smell of pig shit?
Well, I mean, to your point, like his head kind of knows he could be making perfumes. Like he's incredibly sensitive, but he's doing this because the idea is if you can change the food that a pig eats, in order to change what comes out from the other end, then you can diminish the smell of a pig farm. And that's actually the biggest obstacle in building new pig farms.
For zoning and neighbors and so on, or anything like that?
Yeah, exactly. And not just, for whole communities that don't want these things nearby. And if you can diminish that, well, maybe you can build more of them, you can build them closer, you can build more, you can put more pigs in them. I mean, there's all kinds of opportunities that come up once you can sort of give the pig what it needs without having to get like the worst chemicals. And some of these chemicals, like with the ladybug, are really, really subtle. Like they're really small. Mm-hmm. So he that's what he does. And he's got this device and he hooked me up to it. And he was worried that I wouldn't be able to get all of the nuance. So rather than leaving the sample in the pig shit in for a couple minutes, 10 minutes was what he'd do. He left it in overnight. So it really was powerful. When he stuck this thing on my nose, I was the first couple things you smell are actually interesting things because it's broken up into pieces. And there's some nice things in pig shit. There's wet cardboard and taco shell and mushroom, all these great smell, all these things you think are really obnoxious about like wine drinkers. Like those are real chemicals, and they actually you can smell them separately. This is great,
I'm just imagining saying to a date, like, you smell wonderful. It's like wet cardboard and mushrooms.
So earthy. Yeah. Wow. And and you don't know until you smell it. You're like, oh my God, that totally is wet cardboard. And the pigs haven't been eating cardboard. It's just the same chemical. Mm-hmm. And then we get to the sulfates, and man, that's the business end of pig shit. Like I felt like I was getting like run over by a manure truck, and or had my like face down one of those porta potties for like, It was just horrible. And as I mentioned, these things have a low vapor pressure, so they stick to where they touch.
That's horrible.
The inside of your nose, meaning for the next 3 days, everything I ate, everything I smelled. It's just like, good.
Had a hint of pig sphincter taint.
Exactly.
So you turn in that piece. What was there any turn of phrase or portion of that piece that you were proudest of when you turned it in?
Yeah, that's the great thing about this job is, if you read my stories, you only get a fraction of the experience that or any story, any science writer, or really any journalist, you only get a fraction of the experience that they had when they're reporting that story. And it's so rich, and I wish there were more ways to share these things. But the part that I really enjoyed the most was this gentleman he had a very, very sensitive nose, and he was able to, if you fart, he could tell you what you ate.
Wow, that is a great party trick.
It is. It was a great party trick. And his wife, I talked to his wife a while, and she was a really wonderful woman. And she talked about, she was born in Iowa, met him in Alaska when he was a mountain climber, and then ended up moving back to Iowa with his very interesting career. And she just had a great sense of humor about the whole thing. And she's the one who told me that. And also talked about how he used to smell when she first met him. He's a mountain climber, and he smelled great. And now it's like, it's a different reality. We all got to grow up someday, I guess.
Now you mentioned the former Satan worshiper turned evangelical earlier. You are a scientist turned journalist, but you were raised Christian Scientist. Is that right, or was it more your one of your parents, or both?
Tim, did you just compare Satan worshiping to Christian Science?
No, but I think that's probably what the internet's going to say. No, I was trying to do a clumsy transition with the theme of religion, which didn't really work out, which is why I usually avoid talking about religion. But
I don't have to bust your balls on that. I just thought that was funny.
That's okay. Busting my balls is fine.
I did. I grew up in Christian Science. And actually, I didn't really even realize it was all that weird, until you get older and you start thinking back on your childhood. But I didn't go to a doctor till I was 18 years old. It was like the first time, and I remember being bewildered by the whole thing. And so it was, but it was, Christian Science is this really weird, sort of interesting philosophy. It's also a religion, but it's this thing that people don't often think about because they're not as many as there used to be. But it's a fascinating religion that basically says, it's kind of like the Matrix, it says that what you see, all this you see isn't real, and that it's actually a construct of your mind. And if you change your mind, you can change your body. So it's a lot about belief, and really deep belief that what you're seeing isn't true. This cold that you're experiencing, or it's arthritis that you're feeling, it's not real. This is a construct of your mind, which is kind of wacky when you think about it. And imagine growing up in that. It's a little weird.
Well, I had at least one of my grandparents, and I don't think I've ever talked about this, was very much into Christian Science. And at the time, I was whatever, let's call it 5 years old, 6, 7, 8, 9. I was like, oh, something science, sure, why not? Actually visited the Christian Science reading room. I guess they have these reading rooms in different cities at one point. but never really had a ton of direct exposure to it, and did go to the doctor a lot because I was a very sick kid growing up. Did you get really sick at any point? Because I've seen at least one Law and Order about, I think they must be maybe Christian Scientists who have a kid with, say, a life-threatening illness or potentially terminal illness, and they won't let their kid go to the doctor, and then they're in court, and it's very dramatic. Yeah. Did you just dodge all of the bullets, or did you have any serious issues?
Well, I should say, I did have a very healthy childhood. I think most Christian Scientists, if a kid breaks his arm, they're going to go to the doctor. Everyone has their own interpretation. Basic Christian Science says there's like a better way to do this. It's like it's not saying you can't. Technically, it says, there's a better way to heal something, but culturally, it does end up becoming you can't. Like that just ends up being sort of the way people interpret it, and that can be problematic. And if you don't go to doctors, it becomes really scary to go to a doctor. It becomes really frightening
it's built up into some type of mental monster.
Exactly, and you're told all these things about how doctors. It's not. They're not exactly wrong. A lot of things can happen to you in a doctor's office. People do walk out of hospital sicker than they got. That happens, and they went in. That happens, but for the most part, we all know that hospitals and doctors, they're trying to help you, but it's like this. So it is this very difficult thing, and it actually came into play before I remember. I had probably my most serious disease was I don't remember it because I was about 1.5, and at the time, my parents thought it was Legionnaire's disease. I've since talked to some pediatricians and some scientists and tried to figure out what it was, and it's not clear what I had, but it was definitely serious. I was definitely having seizures and turning colors, and my eyes were rolling back in my head. It was serious, and my parents wanted to treat it in Christian Science, and it was touch and go, and I ended up having what Christian Science would call a healing, and a rather instantaneous healing when my parents. My mom got to this point where she just got panicked. I was really, really bad off, and she she called up a practitioner who are these people who help Christian Scientists, sort of over the phone. They were sort of like instructors and guides, and she found a sense of calm. And then she walked back in the room, and I was better. Now you've talked on this program about regression to the mean, which is when people tend to get better after they're the worst. And it's easily explainable that way, but whatever it was a very powerful story for me growing up. It was like, I would think about this a lot, like what this had been like for me as this little baby and the fact that I had been saved by God. And it was a very potent sort of narrative that I had about myself, which actually leads to the book I wrote, because it turns out that's a very powerful thing and you mentioned placebos in that same episode. It's a very important part of the placebo effect is your narrative.
Right. So the placebo effect has been endlessly fascinating to me. We might as well go there. What was your first experience with the firsthand experience with the placebo effect?
Well, I one could argue my childhood,
right.
but say. without insulting 100,000 people, I think where it really hit me, and actually I met one of the leading scientists, researchers in the country on placebos is a former Christian Scientist. We actually went to the same college, Christian Science College, and that's how I sort of realized that there was this connection between belief and what's called expectation and this healing. And so I really got into this thing, and one of the earlier reporting trips I did was to the NIH facilities in Bethesda, Maryland. Have you ever been there?
I have not.
It's like kind of a scary place. It's beautiful. It's amazing. It's like, basically a miracle factory. The amazing research that they do there.
Why is it scary?
Well, it's like these big blocky, sort of industrial looking brick buildings with like smoke coming out of the tops of them.
It's like East Berlin circa 1970.
Yeah. Or
Right.
some really bad movie in which, we're going to like where Dr. Frankenstein has his college, but it's actually this amazing place. And I went to this tiny little lab, a woman by the name of Luana Coloca, and she's an Italian researcher. And she basically said, okay, I'm going to put you in a placebo research trial. And and I didn't really know what I was getting into, but she hooked up with these electrodes to my hands, and she said, okay, we're going to electrocute you. And we ended up, so we kind of figured out where on my pain scale was, I think it was a 7 or a 6, a pretty powerful shock that like, it was so powerful that I'd twitch, really, really not comfortable. And then they had another one that was like a 1, and it was maybe a little pinch. And so every time I saw a green screen, I'd get the 1. Every time I saw a red screen, I get the 7. And she purposely sort of like would show me the red, and then she'd like wait a beat, and then
watch you flinch.
Yeah, because and turns out this is really important for the placebo because it's creating expectation. And I'd be like, oh my god, and you twitch, horrible. And she'd go back and forth, zipping back and forth, and and you just come to dread that red screen. And then on the last run, it felt a little like the number 1 had been like turned up like 1. It was not like a 2. If you look at the score I was keeping, it's like I'd call it 2. And then the red is obviously and I'm twitching. And then she walks in and she says, that was a great job on that last run. I gave you the high one every time.
Huh.
Like, and it was just and I mean, it wasn't just that I felt, or I was convincing myself that I had less pain, or like I was like I had less pain. I was not twitching. Like I was not fooling myself. I'm not an idiot. Like it was less, and I just blew my mind.
So objectively, the stimulus was the same, but your nervous system responded according to your expectations.
Exactly. My brain filled in the gap. Your brain has expectations, and it doesn't want to be wrong. So when it's wrong, it just makes up the difference. And in this case, it released basically a morphine drug that's already in my brain into the brain, and it basically covered up the pain. So I basically got a shot of morphine so fast that you almost can't even measure it. It happens that quick. It happens faster than my brain can realize. It's in more pain than expected, because your brain does not want to be wrong. It does not want to be proven wrong. And that just blew me away, because I kind of, in the back of our head, we all think the placebo effect at its heart is like people just gullible people who don't want to admit what really happened. But these are real biochemical reactions that happen, and they are measurable. And I was hooked at that point.
So then what have been some of the other, of course, I'm a human guinea pig. I do all sorts of ill-advised things to myself, trying to ensure I don't mortally wound myself. But what are some of the other experiments that you've done or experiences that you've had involving this personally? Now, there's one you mentioned that I don't have any context on, which was related to a curse of some type. So immediately, this is of interest to me. I've spent a good amount of time in places like Brazil and elsewhere where there's quite a bit of talk about this type of thing. So I would love to just hear the story, since I don't know the first thing about it.
Well, I'll answer the first question first, then we'll talk about curses. I spent a lot of time getting burned, poked, prodded. I threw up once because nausea is also responsive to placebos. And so it's in a nausea experiment. I've done a lot of these sort of things, but the thing that's really the most useful for placebo research is pain. And when it comes to placebos, it really affects things like, like Parkinson's, pain, depression, anxiety, irritable bowel syndrome. Basically, all these things are connected by dopamine and a few other chemicals that seem to really respond well to placebos. And that's why placebos are so interesting, is because some things have these like 60, 70% responses, and other things, 10, 15%. So there's something going on there. And so because pain, you can't cause depression in a laboratory, though I might argue with the current presidential debate, you could you can cause depression like on command, but it's not something you can really play with. But pain you can. So I've spent a lot of time getting burned and poked and all kinds of things because that's what scientists studying placebo effect study is pain, and there's actually a lot of implications for that. And when you, so an example of one of these things is, and I'm getting to your question. Your second
I'm not in a rush. This is not a 3-minute morning TV show. We got time.
Where was it? Oh yeah. Getting so there's a classic experiment where okay, so a lot of these things are they're not conscious, these placebo effects. And you talk in the other episode about how like, oh, now that I know that homeopathy isn't real or isn't effective, it doesn't work on me anymore. Well, that's not true for everybody. Actually, for a lot of people, they can't help the fact that, say, homeopathy or a placebo works. In fact, you can tell someone this is a placebo pill. It is inert. Give it to them, and they will still have a placebo response.
What's the explanation for that?
Well, it's a lot of it's classical conditioning. How many times have you ever like taken a Tylenol and been like, like, oh my God, my head hurts, oh my God, I'm in so much pain. Take the Tylenol and be like, oh God, thank you. Oh, I can think. Has that ever happened to you? It happens to me.
Sure. Yeah.
Well, Tylenol doesn't kick in for like 20 minutes.
Right.
So what are you experiencing? Well, that is, and whether or not it's real or not, like that's basically classical conditioning, like love. You condition yourself to have the experience. And so you are getting drugs. They're just drugs that are already in your head. They're not from the outside. And so for some people, it doesn't matter what you tell them. It's subconscious. Their brain's going to do it whether you want them to or not. And one of the people who's studying this, she does this. She uses faces, but they're flat. They flash at you so quickly you can't recognize them, but your brain does. And one of those faces is attached to more pain, and the other one's attached to less pain. And so you see these faces, and your brain goes more pain, and then it responds. Your conscious brain can't tell the difference between these two faces, but your unconscious brain sees it, knows what's about to come. And this is again, in this case, it was burning pain, but it was pain. And so that, and that's what underlies a lot of this stuff. And that's some of the really exciting research going on right now is looking at the unconscious nature of placebo effects. And they may follow a totally different path. They may be kind of like Google Maps where they kind of overlap on a couple roads and then they diverge a lot. But it's a whole different thing. And it's really beyond our reach. And one of the big questions that comes up is like, well, are some people able to tap into this and other people not? But so I mentioned that you have high pain, you have low pain, right? Well, the low pain is obviously a placebo effect. But you're getting the same pain, the same stimulus, but your brain prepares you. Your brain changes it, so your experience is different. And so there's a low pain, which is like, oh, I don't feel any pain on this one because I saw a certain face. And that's the placebo response. But there's also the high pain, right? The higher pain than actually you should be feeling. And your brain's like, oh my God, this is going to be very, very painful. That's called the nocebo response.
Nocebo, right.
Exactly. And almost every study that looks at placebos, you also have a nocebo piece of that equation. But nocebos are actually really hard to study, and they're really unethical to study in the way that we'd want to. It's like you want to give someone a drug and be like, this is going to make you really, really sick, or this is going to kill you, or something. Like you can't do that. It's
IRB doesn't like to prove that kind of stuff.
Exactly. That has been tried and it has not worked out. So, you talk to these scientists and some of them are like, oh man, I understand this isn't ethical, but man, I'd really like to know.
back in the good old day, it was like Cahill and those folks could fast subjects for 40 days. Can't do that with mice for, I don't think you can even exceed like 72 hours now. Science.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. And like, there are these great stories that I'm never really able to verify about people, with being told they were having cigarettes being put on their backs and all these terrible things they do to prison inmates, to test the nocebo, basically, whatever this thing, they didn't really have a name back then. But I used to be able to do that kind of stuff. So nocebos are a little thin on researching. When I was writing this chapter, it was hard to fill it out. Like you've got so much. There's some really interesting stuff in there. Nocebos are definitely more powerful than placebos. If I want to train you to have a placebo response, we got to do it a bunch of times so that you really get it down, that this is less pain. If I want you to have a nocebo response, I just have to tell you, this is going to hurt. This is really going to hurt. Get ready. And your brain's just wired for fear. Mm-hmm. So that's cool. But I needed more. So I really started getting into these ideas about superstition and how you can like really, cause bad things to happen in your life just through expectation, just through belief and real belief. I mean, you can't half-ass these things. You really have to feel it. And before long, I came to curses, and I've read about these amazing things that have happened to people in Haiti. There's stories of people dying from being cursed. There's just in Haiti, obviously the zombie is a well-known phenomenon that isn't fully understood. There's only been 3 zombies that have really been documented, and none of them are recent. Okay,
I have to pause for a second. No, I saw, I think, The Serpent and the Rainbow, which was I thought was a great movie when I saw it. I haven't seen it in probably 15 years. But what characterizes a zombie in the clinical sense at this point?
Well, unfortunately, there haven't been any that have been recent, and there are actually a couple of them got written up in the Journal of Science. Oh no, was it Royal Academy of Sciences? There's been some papers, and mostly they're debunked. But a zombie is someone who has clearly some kind of brain damage that causes them to shuffle and sort of lose contact with reality, and sort of become a very different sort of person, the way we think of the classic zombie. They obviously don't eat brains, but this is a very, very old myth that's sort of really tied into the history of Haiti. And no one's, there've been a couple documented cases, but it's, the 30s, and
right.
We don't really have a lot of detail. So there's a couple theories, and one of them's in The Serpent and the Rainbow. It talks about sort of this pufferfish venom that can cause a sort of a state of catatonic sort of state. And the other idea is part of this thing. So basically, a zombie is created when you give someone a magic potion, you put them underground, you bury them, and then you unearth them, and they're a zombie. And one of the theories is maybe that there's oxygen deprivation. But there's another sort of idea that maybe it's just the cumulative power of everyone's expectations on you. Right. This is who you are now, that you do it to yourself.
Sure. Or, speaking in tongues, same thing, maybe.
Same idea. The power, and this is some of the latest research that's coming out, and keep an eye out for the National Geographic in December. I've got a story on this. Shows that like peer pressure can boost the placebo effect like beyond anything that you can imagine. This is a hugely important part of the placebo effect. And so the nocebo effect, obviously, it could be in there too. Like other people's expectations can affect your body in a very real way. So I get to this point, and I'm like, I really want to experience. Like, what is that? I don't believe in curses. That was my problem. Is I don't believe in these things. I believe in the power of the mind. But so how can you create, that kind of belief? Like, I wanted to have that kind of belief, right? Like, how it is. I'm sure you probably feeling the same thing right now.
I've always been dying to feel like I'm going to die from curses.
Well, one of the tricks I learned about. So I started getting into curses, and I live here in Mexico, so I'm able to talk to what called brujos, or witch doctors. And one of the things I learned is you can only curse someone. The only way to curse someone is you have to tell them they're cursed. You have to do the curse, and then you have to tell them they're cursed. It's the only way it works. I found one woman who's like, no, like I'm so powerful, I'll just kill them from a distance. But mostly they say, you have to tell someone they're cursed.
You have to inform them, right?
Right, and which is such an in my mind, this is a nocebo response. Like, this is a very complicated, socially enforced nocebo response. Right. And I mean, just what you just said a couple of minutes ago, like, I've always wanted to get cursed. Like, there is something, even if you don't believe in curses, there is something off-putting about being cursed. And so I just wanted to know if I cursed myself, if it would work, if I could psych myself out. And so I did. I hired a guy to curse me. And
now, hold on just a second. So you have in Mexico, I would imagine, a fair number of brujo options available. How did you choose this particular person to curse you?
Well, there's actually a market.
looked at his Yelp reviews, or
I literally, it was even more than that. I actually talked to the witch doctor market PR people. There's actually a market, like there's a lot of like local markets in Mexico, and there's one that focuses on brujeria or witch doctors sort of paraphernalia, and they got like these weird little like burned dolls that have evil powers. They've got coyote skins. I was assuming these things would all be like secret and hidden, like some back room somewhere where like the dark magic is. Not at all. This is totally upfront. They're like, look, you want
the
dark
farmers
magic?
the farmers market of
Exactly.
of voodoo dolls, right?
It is literally like that. Like it's like, oh, you want white magic? Go to this person. You want black magic? Go to this person. And so it's all out in front. And so I had to, before I went in, I had to actually, we're talking to people, and they're like, oh, you have to talk to the PR department. And there's like this office in the back of the.
Oh, you weren't kidding. I thought you were joking.
I'm dead serious. There's this office in the back of the market, and there's just two guys who sort of hang out there, and they're like, oh, and I was like, I'm here with National Geographic. I'm doing this. And they were like, okay, well, sign this paper. And curses, they're very scary. And okay, there you go. And talk to this guy and this guy. They're our favorites. And so we did a little investigating and sort of found out who to talk to, and they were the same people that were recommended by the PR people. So we talked to a couple different people, and I sort of chose one of them. Was genuinely scary, I think, and genuinely really believed that she could kill people with her curses. And she was out there, and so like I didn't actually go with her because I was afraid she'd find it insulting, to have a curse put on myself. And I went to the other guy who kind of got it. He said, oh, like a guinea pig. Okay, I guess I can do this. Like, that terrible things can happen. And I said, okay. And he was a lot more sort of, he was also black magic and knew lots of like evil powers, but he was a little more, willing to go with me on it. And so I sort of chose him. And I walked around for a week and a half with a curse over me.
And then what? So so A, did anything happen? And then B, did you have to get it removed like stitches later by the same guy, or what happens?
Did. Well, I decided I wasn't going to change anything. I just want to live my life normally, just do what I normally would do. And so, I went out and drank half a bottle of scotch, a good friend of mine, and like walked home, and I was like, okay, I'm cursed. I have to be careful with cars and stuff like that. But, I was at that point, I wasn't really, worried about curses. But the rest of the week went by, and I logged every bad thing that happened to me, and not really much happened. And I started to get kind of cocky, and I even went rock climbing. I'm a big rock climber, and I even went like rock climbing with some friends over the weekend, and and I was leading. I was going first, which it's not super dangerous. I've done it many times before, but it's not a safe thing to do. But and they're all making fun of me because I was cursed and climbing. But by the time I got to the end, I said, yeah, this has really been a bust. Nothing's really happened. I'm kind of psyching myself out, but not really. And then I went back to get the curse removed, and the guy wasn't there. He was
gone fishing.
He'd gone fishing. Literally, he was like, "Oh yeah, like the curse. Yeah, he's not. He's dealing with some family things. Come back next week." So I had another like weekend, and I'll never forget. It was June, not this last year, but the year before. And I had another weekend, and I was basically be cursed for that weekend. I was like, whatever. Like, nothing happened last weekend. Nothing's gonna happen this weekend. And on Saturday night, my wife, who was pregnant at the time, started to feel some painful pangs in her stomach. And by the next morning, it had gotten pretty bad. And we talked to the doctor, and the doctor said, you need to go to the hospital right now. And they were worried that it was contractions that were starting. She was like 4 months pregnant. So this contraction is lethal at that point. And so we get in a cab, and we're going to the hospital. And the only thing that's going through my head is the curse. And it's never occurred to her, but I was just panicked that I had killed my child with a curse. And what's interesting is how quickly your mind goes there. How quickly, and it's a logical fallacy that the Romans called a propter hoc ergo hoc, which is if this then that.
Yeah, after this, therefore
yes.
because of this.
Right, exactly.
The correlation versus causation.
Exactly, and it usually comes up in the case of something happening, and then you can go backwards in time and find a cause for it. And this is the home of the curse. Think of the Kennedy curse, right? Like a bunch of Kennedys die in very tragic and strange ways, and you can go back and people have looked for causes. Going back to Ireland and one of his ancestors stepping on a fairy house, because once you have the result, then you can go back and find the cause. And causes seem to be real at that point. And it's exactly what I'm a man of science. I believe in logic, but my brain went there so fast when the shit hit the fan. Like I was suddenly convinced that this was going to happen, and I would never forgive myself if and it would always be in the back of my mind that I had done this. It turned out, so we went to the hospital, and there was an excruciating couple minutes where they couldn't find a heartbeat. And and then they did. And it turned out the baby was fine. It was some bad tacos from the day before. A good friend of mine's going away party, and she was okay. And I learned that day that my baby. They went up, did the sonogram, and learned my baby was a boy. And I was sitting in the room, like laughing with these techs, the medical techs, and I just realized, what a wonderful day it had become. It was actually Father's Day. That Sunday was my first Father's Day, and I realized that this thing that was a curse had suddenly become a blessing, and it's such a construct of what you see, and that these things only have power when you give them power, and it happens fast.
So I have a so follow up to that. Did you go back to the absent witch doctor and get it removed ever?
I did. I'm a man of science, but
how could it hurt? How could it hurt?
How could it hurt? And I followed his instructions. He had me burn a candle and do some other, blew some smoke on me, and the curse is lifted. And
did you tell him what happened? Was he like, "Yeah, I don't want to kill your kid, but I wanted you to just shoot a warning shot to let you know this stuff"?
I didn't tell him. I thought it might weird him out if he thought that he may, because I see this as being like this. This is proper hawk, ergo hawk. This is me looking for a cause for something that happened.
Sure.
But he wouldn't have seen it that way, and I think he would have. I was afraid that he might feel weird about having caused, something like that. So I didn't. I just said that some bad things happened. It was very potent. My electric toothbrush stopped working that week, and so some other things.
It was a practice curse.
Exactly.
So a few questions about placebo, right? There are a couple things that come to mind that I've always been curious about. Number one is, actually, I'll get to the evolutionary question, but the first is, you look at the nocebo effect, which I assume in most cases is an inert substance in the case of, say, ingestibles, or some relatively plain vanilla inactive control of some type, but it's going to make you nauseous, it's going to hurt you, it's going to burn you, whatever it might be. In the case of placebo, we have the same thing, right? We might have sugar pills, we might have some type of relatively inert substance. In the case, again, of ingestibles, are there examples, or is there evidence to suggest that if you have negative expectations, even if you consume a tried and true clinically tested drug, for instance, that does work, that you can negate the effects of that medicine if you expect to die, if you expect to get worse? I mean, is there any evidence to suggest that you can interfere with something that has already been statistically proven to work with negative, if you have negative expectations?
Absolutely, yeah, and that's actually a misconception about placebos. The easiest way to measure them is with an inert substance, but they exist with everything. Like I mentioned, the Tylenol, that you can have placebos on top of active drugs, and it's really a great question. Like, how do you compare the placebo effect for an inert drug versus the placebo effect for an active drug? Because there is one on top of there, and there are nocebo effects too. And so, and this is the thing. This is sort of the thing that I keep, trying to drive home is like, a lot of this is tied to bedside manner and how doctors interact with you, and they can be as high as 30%. So, like a doctor, if he's going to be a jerk to you, like he's throwing away 30% of his cure on top of what he's giving you. And that's a really rough approximation. That those numbers aren't really worked out yet, but that, I mean, it's a substantial boost that you can get. And you can erode the effectiveness of a drug. It's been played with, actually, in one of the earliest placebo experiments was with dental patients, and they would tell them they were either getting painkillers or they were getting, and they weren't. They also told them they were getting something that would make them worse, and they did.
I'm injecting something to make this root canal worse.
Right, they're going to make this thing worse. And I think they were all recovering dental patients, but dentistry actually played a big role in early placebos. So there's no question that you can erode an active treatment with expectation. And there's even a bigger question that pain scientists are really struggling to understand right now, which is, does your brain get into certain habits? Do you create these pathways? Think of them as like ruts in the road where you can't get your car out of the rut. Thinking about pain, and are there types of pain that are strictly neurological that feel like you have pain in your knee, but it's actually in your head, and these may contribute to a huge portion of the chronic pain in our country.
Yeah, it's this is something I've explored also for myself. I had chronic back pain for a very long time, and there were some structural corrections with specifically gymnastics strength training with this guy named Coach Summer, which helped a lot. But I also read a book, which I'm blanking on the first name of the author, but I believe it's Sarno, Sarno. And about a half dozen of my close friends who had suffered from chronic back pain credited this book with fixing their back pain. And it effectively focuses exclusively on expectations and the mind. And I had about a week of relief after reading that book. Really? So go figure. Of course, N of one. And, if we're going along the lines of Richard Feynman, the first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool. So a lot of science is trying to prevent experimenters from fooling themselves. But the question that I wanted to ask, in a case like that, where it appears to have, at least ultimately, it had a structural component, right? There was an orthopedic issue that I later fixed, but as an intervention, the placebo or mental training component seemed to help. This is going somewhere. You mentioned Parkinson's earlier, and that Parkinson's seems to respond well to placebo. And I'm sure it's not across all patients, but at least a meaningful percentage. And I've read that Alzheimer's, on the flip side, does not. I don't know if that's accurate, but okay. So if that's accurate, what is the plausible explanation or mechanism by which one improves and the other does not? And of course, the experimental designs, I'm sure, are different, but I have both Parkinson's and Alzheimer's on both sides of my family. So this is a very personal question for me, right? And I was speaking with someone who's also been on the podcast, Peter Attia, recently, and we were talking about Alzheimer's disease, and he's like, well, once something is really denatured,
yes,
once the egg turns white, I'm not sure you can reverse it, but so it may be a preventative game. But how does Parkinson's differ? Is it because it's mediated by neurotransmitters and you can somehow rig that game with an expectation? Long question, I know, but how do you think about the difference between efficacy of placebo effect in Parkinson's versus Alzheimer's?
It's a great question. It's a really great question. There is one answer, one word answer, and that's dopamine. Parkinson's is, for those who don't know, it's a deficiency, and usually caused by, usually goes down to substantia nigra in your brain. It's a part that produces this dopamine and monitors these systems it's a deficiency in this chemical. Now, this chemical not only it affects your movement, which is why Parkinson's patients tend to shake. But it also affects reward systems. It's very much in tune with reward systems. You get jolted dopamine. When someone says, "Hey, you just won $1 million," you get jolted dopamine. It tends to feel good, and the downstream, the things that it triggers also make you feel good. It's all around a positive chemical that is related to reward. So, what is placebo if not reward? An expectation is an expectation of reward. So basically, it just so happens that Parkinson's is mediated by a chemical that happens to be really important in placebos, and that's the only answer that I can give you right now. Is that it just so happens to be the right chemical that it affects your movement, but it also has this other role. And because of that, and that happens with a lot of these different chemicals, like CCK, which is a chemical that affects the nocebo response, and it also affects your stomach. And so, irritable bowel syndrome, it may be one of the reasons why irritable bowel syndrome responds so well to placebos. But that simple fact plays a huge role. And dopamine is one of these big chemicals in your brain. It has its fingers in everything. So and there is not a mechanism like that in Alzheimer's that lends itself to a placebo effect. It's not to say that placebo doesn't exist in Alzheimer's, but it's much easier to explain with like statistical explanations, like your regression to the mean. And it also may damage the fundamental parts of your brain that you need in order to have
to exert the results, or to exert the placebo effect upon oneself.
That same argument has been made for autism. It's definitely not settled. I have lately seen some really interesting studies in autism and placebos, and I know a couple of the top scientists are turning their attention to it right now. But people have often said that for years, that autism is the same way. But there is a degenerative element to Parkinson's that sure. is not. It's not like Alzheimer's, but there is a degenerative. But what's amazing is the placebo effect I've seen it almost reverse that. I mean, it's amazing. That's and you got to wonder where that dopamine's coming from. But I have seen people in the book and also in the story coming out in December, I talk about a gentleman who was really struggling 10 years. And today, I think he just climbed Half Dome this year.
So with Parkinson's?
With Parkinson's.
Now, so this I guess begs the question, and there may not be, I don't expect a miracle answer to this, but placebo effect, most people would think of as being tricked or tricking oneself, right? Mm-hmm. So if you wanted to proactively use the placebo effect, and you have a parent or a grandparent with Parkinson's and you wanted to help them, or they wanted to help themselves, what do you do?
Well, first of all, I think it's very important. Feynman and all these other folks who say, you can't deceive yourself as a scientist is very important. As a patient, throw it out the window, man. Right. Deceive away. You obviously want to be careful. I mean, that's sort of the $64,000 question, right? Like, this is what everyone wants to know. Is like, how can I use this? And the answer that I've come up with from a lifetime in Christian Science, childhood in Christian Science, and a years studying this is we already do. There's a lot of options out there for using placebos, and it's different for everyone. Some people, it's some product you buy. It could be. It's interesting if you look at placebos across different cultures. In France, suppository placebos work better than normal placebos. Ask me why. You just let you draw your own conclusions. In Britain, foul tasting ones work better. And in Parkinson's patients, actually, I've seen studies that show that if you take a pill, it's let's see, I think you get about maybe average of 15% more movement, more mobility, and if you get a fake surgery, it's like 25.
The
right?
sham surgery research is so fascinating. Yes. I mean, just for people listening who have never looked at this stuff, do some Googling around sham surgery experiments, and you find people who have, legitimate structural fuck ups in their knees who get fake surgeries where they get opened up and they're under general anesthesia, so they're knocked out, and then they wake up, it's sutured together, and they're like, yeah, doc, my knee feels so much better even months later. It's fascinating.
What's hilarious about those, and that these are very common in placebo, I'm sorry, in Parkinson's research. And what Parkinson's researcher told me that the greatest breakthrough in Parkinson's research has been the sham surgery. But they, when you do these surgeries, like the doctors, they don't know they're doing the real one or the sham until the moment of, and they have to they get the card and it says, this is a real one. And then they have to actually sit and wait for the entire surgery to be over for a sham surgery, because you can't walk out of the room early, and have the patient's family out there watching you come out after 5 minutes, right, to go play, Candy Crush or something like that. Like you have to sit in there and then,
easiest surgery ever. Huge success, right? Guys. Go get a sandwich. It's going to be a while before he wakes up.
Exactly. You can't do that. So like, they've thought these things through, because in today's connected age, these patients find each other and they compare stories, and they can unblind a study if you figure out that your doctor walked out of your surgery 5 minutes after it started. So it's really tricky. And I've sat in on some of these kinds of surgeries, and it is, in Parkinson's, it is stunning what can happen with these things. So yeah, I was saying, across different people, like there's different things that resonate with different people. Maybe it's like, space age technology. Maybe it's ancient mysticism. There's lots of different ways that you can get in touch with your expectations. But the thing is this is not hope. This is belief. This is the thing in Christian Science that I remember growing up, is that people don't say God will heal me. People say God already healed me. I just can't see it yet.
Which are two very different things, right? I mean,
very different things. Expectation is triggered by certainty, by a certain level of certainty. Now, there's a great question as to like whether it's the same for everybody, whether certain people are just talented with their own expectation. But there's, you really have to believe. And
how do you manufacture that, though? If, for instance, and I'm not saying, because I think we all overestimate how logical we are in all aspects of our lives, or many of us do. But if you've tried to train yourself to be hyper rational, how do you do that? Do you just need to become so desperate that you want something to work? So your condition has to be kind of reach a point of being particularly bad, or is there another approach? Because I know a lot of scientists, and if I were to try to say, hey, like you have this condition, you can't seem to figure it out, you should go try acupuncture. And they'd be like, looked at the data, not compelling. Right.
This is, if you want to like really make a doctor or scientist uncomfortable, ask him this question. and especially someone who studies this. No, it doesn't. I mean, desperation, the problem with desperation is and in my book I lay out like 3 rules of ways not to hurt yourself, and these can be dangerous. These are life-threatening, these are life-threatening issues, and we all know stories about people who have relied on placebo treatments that have then died from, say, cancer. So desperation is not a great word when I think about these things. It can be fun though. It can be sort of an exploration and sort of looking into your own mind, things that might be plausible. And one of my rules, I say, don't die or don't hurt yourself. And the second one is don't go broke. Like you have to be careful that, like, in order to create expectation, you shouldn't need to spend $2,000 a month, on something. And so there's this, it's a very tricky,
and don't hurt the planet, right? Or don't.
And that's the third one.
And I know I read a little snippet about this, which is like, don't use endangered animals. And people might be like, what, endangered animals? It's like, yeah, don't go to Chinatown and buy black bear gallbladder extract, because that's why there are these horrifying, I've seen video of this, farms in China that look like concentration camps where they have bears and tigers, their entire facilities with like dozens of tigers hooked up to basically these sort of extraction machines. It's really terrible.
It's not worth it. There are other ways.
Or shark fin soup, all that bullshit.
The shark part is like actually is more chondroitin for sharks, but it's but all of these things they there are other ways to engage your expectation. There are other ways to create a placebo response. And some of these placebo responses, there is growing evidence, and I'm having a hard time believing it's not true that some of these things can become permanent. You can, and you've talked a lot about rewiring your brain. Some of the, relief can, that comes from belief can be permanent. I've certainly seen it as a Christian Scientist growing up. And the trick is sort of finding the thing that does it for you and doesn't cause damage to you or others, and there are lots of options. Like, you want to drink your own urine, like, go for it. Like, there's lots of different ways that whatever resonates for you. These things, it's a delicate game, and maybe you have to experiment with a lot of things. And there's some people out there who simply, it won't work. And that's, I think, and there's some really great, interesting research going on, again, with dopamine into genetics and the genetics of placebo. And there are some people who, it seems, just don't respond. And they're just going to be out of luck.
Like hypnosis, right? I mean, very much related, probably.
Very much. It's not as stable. Hypnosis tends to be stable over time, and placebo tends to change from day to day. But because your opinions change, all these things change. But it does look like there are some people that if you exclude them, and it doesn't really work on an individual basis, but if you take 1,000 people and you look at their genetics, you can take out the 300 who are most likely to respond, and it looks like we might be onto something there.
Do you know offhand what the markers are or what the SNPs are?
Yes, the most effective one so far, and there's about 30 that have been found, but the most effective and there's another. I'm writing a piece on this right now. Is COMT? It's the poorly titled warrior gene, but it's involved with an enzyme that eats dopamine. So if you have a very active enzyme, you have a lot less dopamine. You got a lot more efficient system that takes away all your dopamine. And then if you have a lazy one, you got a lot of extra dopamine laying around, and those people tend to respond to placebos at a higher rate.
People who have more dopamine laying around.
Extra dopamine laying around. There's also some personality, and I'm sure you're familiar with this. There's some generalizable personality differences between people they're called Mets versus the Val-Vals. This is a classic Mendelian sort of breakdown of, like, you got the Mets, the Val-Vals, and the Val-Mets, and there's 50%, 25%, 25%. You can imagine a little box, the old pea pod thing. Anyway, I'm getting off.
I love it.
But
which one of those responds best to placebos?
The Mets. Cool. The Mets. It looks like there's some research out of Harvard, and it's been backed up in some ways that have been published and some that haven't been published. That it's super new, but it's really exciting, and it's. I personally am a Met Val. I'm a mix, so I'm the least interesting of the three because I'm somewhere in the middle, and I've got some lazy ones.
Well, thank God you could have died from your curse.
I know, right? Met, maybe I wouldn't be here. Have you done? I'm sure you've done 23andMe, right, Tim?
Yeah, I've had my full genome sequence, but I don't know if I'm a Met Val or Met Val. I do not know that piece.
It's a great, and there's a few others. I basically am. I think the scientist who I talked to called me let's say, I think I was just sort of a mix, like we're all across the board. Like I didn't have anything that was that except for one. I have the coding on the receptor for opioids in my brain is a little hungrier. It attaches better.
So no recreational heroin for you then.
Yeah, it is. You're right. It's related to addiction. So you do have to be careful with that one. So, and that all people who are, this is what's interesting about this is like these different chemicals in your brain related to placebos start working with or against each other, right? Because it's just, now you got a big mix and they're all, making noise. And so that's one of the reasons why this is probably so hard to figure out, because it's not one thing.
What other conditions that people might recognize, like IBS, you mentioned, related to, I think, CCK, pain, Parkinson's, what other conditions seem to respond well to placebo based on the data?
Depression, anxiety, nausea, and obviously addiction is one that seems to be in this game. A lot of these things are related to dopamine or opioids, internal opioids, like endorphins. And there's something like, and there's a couple, and I've struggled to find really good examples of especially low responders, but OCD seems to be a pretty low responder and you also mentioned Alzheimer's seem to be low responders to placebos.
What if somebody wanted to make a placebo pill as effective as possible? So I've read bigger pills versus smaller. Anything else? Colors? Any other form factor? Anything that comes to mind?
Are you French?
As much as I love suppositories, I don't know. Maybe that reflects some French blood. I'd have to look into it.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that the best placebo would be an active placebo, and I make the argument in my book that's what acupuncture is. An active placebo is a placebo that is inert but causes something to happen in your body. The easiest one is tingling. And
like niacin, which is why so many bunk supplements include niacin or something called beta alanine, because it causes this skin flushing, and people are like, something's happening, and that, of course. I don't know that. Oh yeah, it's very common practice.
Oh, that's great. No, I have to look that up. I've turned off all my computers for this interview, but I'm going to have to remember that. But yeah, that's exactly what. And there's actually a lot of, if you really want to get into it, there's actually a lot of debate around it. There is no true placebo because they used to be sugar pills, and sometimes they use like a sort of type of like basically corn or it's not clear what a rice. It's not clear if you're allergic to something like rice. That's not a placebo. It's going to affect you. So there is no like real true placebo. So it's really hard to create a true active placebo, something that's completely inert except for one effect, like your fingers tingling. But in as much as we can do that, we have created some interesting placebos that make your fingers tingle, and you're like, oh my God, something's happening, and then whatever expectation you have gets boosted, and that's a very potent way to enhance the placebo effect. It's why pharmaceutical companies don't use active placebos because if they did, they'd never be able to clear any drugs to the FDA.
Yeah, they might not get the results they want either.
Exactly.
There's some that's for a separate episode maybe,
yes.
But there's some really interesting approaches that companies take to ensure they get the results they want.
Right, exactly.
It's like, what if you run 10 studies and you fund them all and then you only submit 2? Well, right. that could be interesting. I know we don't have a ton of time left, but I wanted to mention a couple of things. The first is I was spending some time with a friend of mine who's former surgeon, MD, brilliant guy. And he was talking about how he, as an N of 1, tried to use placebo control, which is very interesting. So he would, and of course he could have sort of experiment or blinded this with having, say, his wife do this for him, which he did in a few cases, but he would put these pills, whether they were, or capsules, whatever they might be, and he would encapsulate placebos, right? So he would actually put something relatively inert, like a sugar or fill in the blank rice flour or whatever, into these capsules and wrap them in tinfoil and then number them. And he would keep track, or his wife would keep track of which were placebo and which were active, and then look at the results over time. It's a lot of work, especially if you're going to really try to make it defensible. But I guess what I'm wondering is, how have you used all the things you've learned and been exposed to? How do you currently use that in your life, or how do you plan to?
Well, let me just say, if there's anyone listening who has access to placebo pills, especially different colors and different shapes, give me a call, because I would love it. They're actually hard to get a hold of. Most research institutions sort of have their own little recipe, and you can buy them online, but I can't really tell what's in those. So I would love to. And one of my plans for this book was to be taking tons of placebo pills, and I haven't been able to do that. So your friend is amazing, and I'd love to hear what he came up with. So
one of them, I'll tell you, is that he actually got Pez and cut them into the shape, same color of the tablets he was taking.
Oh, that's beautiful. I mean,
that's also, I mean, you have to kind of be like a necklace craftsman to make that work. But
right. And once you spend that much time looking at this thing, are you really not going to recognize it? Like,
yeah.
But and also, Pez is not a true placebo because sugar is it's a stimulant a little bit, and so it could also be sort of an active placebo of its own sort. That's I would love to do that, and I'd love to have someone like give me the hookup for like you said, colors and size and shapes have a big role to play in function.
Which colors have you seen in experiments function better than others? Do any
Yellow works well for depression. That's been pretty well established. Larger tends to work better than smaller up to a certain size, and then just gets uncomfortable.
Then you have to just use it as a suppository.
At that point, you might as well. And there have been a few other ones that I've seen, usually based around marketing. Something that looks like Advil, and that's hard to tell. I think
diamond shaped and blue, something like that.
I read,
it's Viagra.
Exactly, that's right. Yeah, that one. I have a whole bit on my book about Viagra. I'm not going to be started on Viagra, but the other one is gel caps versus this normal sort of white pills, and I've seen sort of very small studies sort of mixed on that one, but it's very personal. It's a very personal experience. It's hard to lump groups of people into what they like, and that's part of the fun or whatever of this process. For me, I am much more comfortable with the idea that we are suggestible. This is real. This is who we are. This is across. I mean, part of this project, I went to China. I mean, my photographer went to the jungles of Peru and the highlands of Peru, and we went followed pilgrims in Europe, and this is who we are. This is. You almost don't have to try. Like, we do this.
Well, that was going to be my evolutionary point. Like, maybe it's a vestigial dead end of some type, but otherwise, I mean, there's a role that this plays. I mean, this is something across cultures that we've evolved to retain for some reason.
No question. And we're not alone. I mean, animals, you can get placebo responses in animals. You can even have immune placebo responses you can program in rats. You can train them to have immune responses, basically the same kind of response you'd have if you're getting an organ donated to you and you needed to cut your immune response down. You can do that through expectation in rats. I don't think it's been done in humans. It's probably going to be, once again, some ethical issues there with doing that one, but so this is fundamental to who we are, and there's a great evolutionary reason why this might be. One can easily imagine that having, if you imagine sort of a group of people, fending for themselves, having some members of that group being able to be, very clear-eyed, very matter of fact, not influenced by suggestion at all, might have some benefits for the group. And then having other people who are more suggestible but able to go out after an injury, and after sort of healing themselves their own expectation, but blowing smoke in their face and then feeling better, and being more responsive to healing, could definitely have also a benefit for that community being a genetic population, and there being a good reason to have both of those elements in different degrees in a community. Evolution's all about diversity, genetic diversity, and it makes a lot of sense to me why we would be programmed this way. And if you're going to choose one, you want to be the second one. You want to be able to heal yourself if you can. Like, that's something I take away from this. Is like, I think going in, I think I would prefer to be the first one, but coming out of this research, man, the second one has a lot of options available to them. They got a lot of different ways that they can harness their own healing. I mean, chronic pain sucks. And if you have extra tools to deal with chronic pain, use them, man. And I think that's a valuable thing to have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's such a fascinating topic, and we could talk for hours about your adventures in Mexican fishing villages and great white sharks, and that'll have to be another time. But Eric, where can people find more about, of course, the book Suggestible You? More about you? Where can they say hello on the web or social or anywhere else?
Sure. Suggestibleyou.com is the book's website, and you can read about upcoming events. I'm going to be traveling in November, and then again in January I'll be in the Bay Area and New York, Boston. And if anyone has any events that they'd like to hear more about this kind of stuff, I'm happy to travel. I love sharing this stuff. This stuff is so much fun. You can also check out my other work at ericvance.com. And there's, like you said, I've spent some time in, ancient Mayan temples. I've chased sharks. I've had a weird couple of years. And then if you want to say hi to me, I'm on Twitter at Eric Vance. It's with a K.
Eric with a K.
Yeah, Eric with a K.
And for everybody listening, of course, in the show notes, I will link to everything as always. So we will have links to everything that Eric just mentioned, as well as any resources that might have come up in the conversation. Eric, thank you so much for taking the time. This has been a blast.
Thanks for having me, Tim.
And to everybody listening, as always, and until next time, thank you for taking the time to tune in to The Tim Ferriss Show. Hey guys, this is Tim again. Just a few more things before you take off. Number one, this is 5 Bullet Friday. Do you want to get a short email from me? Would you enjoy getting a short email from me every Friday that provides a little morsel of fun before the weekend? And 5 Bullet Friday is a very short email where I share the coolest things I've found or that I've been pondering over the week. That could include favorite new albums that I've discovered. It could include gizmos and gadgets and all sorts of weird shit that I've somehow dug up in the world of the esoteric as I do. It could include favorite articles that I've read and that I've shared with my close friends, for instance. And it's very short. It's just a little tiny bite of goodness before you head off for the weekend. So if you want to receive that, check it out. Just go to 4hourworkweek.com. That's 4hourworkweek.com, all spelled out, and just drop in your email and you will get the very next one. And if you sign up, I hope you enjoy it. This episode is brought to you by 99 Designs. When your business needs a logo, website, business card, thumbnail, or any other design, I recommend checking out 99 Designs. I use them myself. I've used them for many years. I use them to create book cover prototypes for the 4-Hour Body, which went on to become a #1 New York Times bestseller. I've also used them for banner ads, illustrations, and much more. With 99 Designs, you get a variety of original designs from designers around the world. Give your feedback and then pick your favorite. Your happiness is guaranteed. So check out some of my competitions and designs and some of your competitions and designs from fellow Tim Ferriss Show listeners at 99designs.com/Tim. And right now you can get a free $99 upgrade on your first design. So check it out, 99designs.com/Tim. This episode is brought to you by Wealthfront, and this is a very unique sponsor. Wealthfront is a massively disruptive, in a good way, set it and forget it investing service led by technologists from places like Apple and world-famous investors. It has exploded in popularity in the last 2 years, and they now have more than $2.5 billion under management. In fact, some of my very good friends, investors in Silicon Valley, have millions of their own money in Wealthfront. So the question is why? Why is it so popular? Why is it unique? Because you can get services previously reserved for the ultra-wealthy, but only pay pennies on the dollar for them. And this is because they use smarter software instead of retail locations, bloated sales teams, etc. And I'll come back to that in a second. I suggest you check out wealthfront.com/Tim. Take the risk assessment quiz, which only takes 2 to 5 minutes, and they'll show you for free exactly the portfolio they'd put you in. And if you just want to take their advice, run with it, do it yourself, you can do that. Or, as I would, you can set it and forget it. And here's why. The value of Wealthfront is in the automation of habits and strategies that investors should be using on a regular basis, but normally aren't. Great investing is a marathon, not a sprint, and little things that you may or may not be familiar with, like automatic tax loss harvesting, rebalancing your portfolio revenue across more than 10 asset classes, and dividend reinvestment add up to very large amounts of money over longer periods of time. Wealthfront, as I mentioned, since it's using software instead of retail locations, etc., can offer all of this at low costs that were previously completely impossible. Right off the bat, you never pay commissions or account fees. For everything, they charge 0.25% per year on assets above the first 15,000, which is managed for free if you use my link, wealthfront.com/Tim. That is less than $5 a month to invest a $30,000 account, for instance. Now, normally when I have a sponsor on this show, it's because I use them and recommend them. In this case, it's a little different. I don't use Wealthfront yet because I'm not allowed to. Here's the deal. They wanted to sponsor this podcast, but because of SEC regulations, companies that invest your money are not allowed to use client testimonials. So I couldn't be a user and have them on the podcast. But I've been so impressed by Wealthfront that I've invested a significant amount of my own money, at least for me, in the team and the company itself. So I am an investor and hope to soon use it as a client. Now back to the recommendation. As a Tim Ferriss Show listener, you'll get $15,000 managed for free if you decide to open an account, but just start with seeing the portfolio that they would suggest for you. Take 2 minutes, fill out their questionnaire at wealthfront.com/Tim. It's fast, it's free. There's no downside that I can think of.